other than David Meerman Scott. Now, I don't know if you've come across his original book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, but if you haven't, where have you been for the last decade? David has kindly agreed to have a conversation with me about what he thinks is happening in marketing, what his goals and ambitions are, and how the world of marketing is changing. So, David, without further ado, why don't you tell the audience who may have been living in the marketing dark ages for the last decade a little bit about yourself?
Sure. And thanks for having me on this conversation. It's going to be good fun. Always love speaking to my friends from Sydney. I think I've been to Sydney 20 times by now. It's
Wow.
one of my favorite places. So I started my career in the on a bond trading desk. I was absolutely terrible at it. But what I found I really loved was the information side. I loved
Okay.
the real-time information on the screens. And I worked in that business for about 15 years for companies like Dow Jones and Reuters. And most recently, I worked for Thomson Reuters, and they sacked me in 2002. And which was great because that allowed me to go and do my own thing. That was 17 years ago. I've been unemployed since. Um, but what but what I realized is because I had learned so much about the real-time financial information business by working at those companies, that I actually had a head start in digital marketing as it's evolved to include social, because I already understood how content worked. I already understood how social networking worked, even though it didn't even exist yet. So I started to write and do presentations around how marketing is changing, and I wrote a number of books, but the one that you mentioned, the one that I'm most popular for, is called The New Rules of Marketing and PR. That originally came out in 2007. It's now in the sixth edition, and it's in 29 other languages as well. It's sold about 400,000 copies in English, so it's done quite well. And
That's an understatement.
yeah, it's done quite well. And so about 5 years ago, I was thinking to myself, this whole online marketing thing that I was one of the people who helped pioneer has gotten a little bit out of control. We're in a polarized world, especially in my country, around the political environment. It's so polarized. We're in an environment where companies are not treating their customers and their followers with as much respect as they ought to, constantly barraging them with online information. Heck, in some cases, you don't even know if you're communicating with a robot.
Yeah.
So what I recognized is that the the pendulum has swung too far in the direction of superficial online communications, and
Yeah.
I'm partly responsible for that because many people read my books. I don't tell people to do bad marketing, but some people do bad marketing. I think the pendulum is beginning to swing back to a true human connection. And I think the 2020s is going to be an era where true human connection and building fans and growing business by having true relationships with people will be a very powerful way to succeed. And I wrote a new book. It's called Fanocracy,
Ooh.
turning fans into customers and customers into fans. And the idea of a fanocracy, like a democracy or meritocracy, it's where fans rule.
Yeah.
And I think we're entering an era where fans rule.
Like to think of it as an era of authenticity because
Yeah.
it's actually about connecting emotionally with people in a way that you become friends. I mean, look at this. This is a great example. We've never met in person,
Mhm.
but we kind of get a feeling of getting to know each other, having a conversation, sharing authentic, genuine, credible messages with each other, which is kind
Exactly.
of a nice way of thinking behind all of this. There's obviously something that means success for you. How do you actually define success?
For me, at this stage in my career, success is when my ideas help other people to be successful. And I truly mean that. And I really love when I get an email or a social message, and it happens multiple times a day. But I love getting those messages where people say, hey, David, I learned this particular thing at one of your speeches or in one of your books or one of your blog posts or whatever it might be, and I implemented it and I grew my business as a result, or I was able to achieve this result. And that's amazing. It really is truly amazing. So for me, I don't know about other people, but for me, I live vicariously through other people's success, and I feel like I'm really lucky to be able to have that. I don't live in California, but I live in the Boston area, on the East Coast of the United States. But I have like this California vibe in my mind about you know, the hippie culture of giving things, giving gifts to people, giving things away. And I truly believe the more people that I help, the more positive vibes I deliver to the universe, the more it comes back to me in the form of success. And for the past 17 years, that's been true. So that's what success is for me.
Do you know, I love that approach, and it makes sense that you agreed to have the conversation with me now, because in collaborating and communicating, we can continue to share those messages and give you more of those endorphin hits that you get every time someone says, "Hey,
Yeah,
David, you've helped me make my life better or my business better." So that's pretty
absolutely.
damn cool.
Yeah, it
So
is. It is cool. It's really exciting.
let's go back a second to you were thinking about your career and how you almost became, I don't know, an accidental marketer in some ways.
It's
Um,
true. It's true. I never took a marketing course in my life. I now teach marketing. I never took a marketing course. I didn't even know what marketing was. I drifted into it. But I think that actually was helpful. Had I learned the old rules of marketing, I don't know that I
yeah.
could have come up with the new rules of marketing.
I love that. Had you learned the old rules of marketing, you're not sure if you would have been able to come up with the new rules of marketing. Well, the irony is that you came up with a bunch of new rules without kind of knowing what the old rules are. So you must have schooled yourself somehow in the old rules, even if you didn't do it formally, before you
Yeah,
could write the new rules.
I was the head of marketing, the chief marketing officer for a couple of different companies. So I worked with agencies, and I worked with other marketers. I had a team of about at the peak about 20 people worked for me,
Yeah,
who many of them were professional marketers who had studied marketing or
yeah.
who had learned under other people. But I was self-taught. And a lot of people then focused on the idea of buying attention, spending
Yeah.
money on advertising. And I'm not saying that's always wrong, but for me, I felt that it was not the best way to get attention. I felt like you can generate attention yourself by by creating interesting content on the web, by
Mm,
providing
mm,
value to people. You can generate attention in a really interesting way. And for me, that became what became the new rules of marketing was realizing that attention is not always buying attention, but you can
mm.
generate attention for free by putting some interesting stuff out there.
And you have kind of flipped it. Now we're in a place where people are trying to demand and crave attention all the time. And that flip side is perhaps what you were talking about is
Yeah, no, I think that's
authenticity
right.
and
I think that's
collaboration,
right.
human connection.
I think
But
it's gone too far in the
yeah,
direction of superficial connections.
that's a perfect way of describing it. Superficial connections,
Yeah,
because it's not just connection for the sake of connection anymore. You can connect with anyone, but are you actually making meaning out of that
correct.
relationship?
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly
definitely.
right. Yeah, exactly right.
So, from that background and experience, is there anything that you wish you had learned earlier in your lifetime or earlier in your career that you'd now like to pass on to people so that they don't have to learn that lesson all over again?
um, no, not really. The only thing that I keep thinking I should learn and have always put off is I
Okay.
don't know. I don't know a freaking thing about how to read a balance sheet or a spreadsheet or financials. I serve as an advisor to a bunch of different companies, and whenever it comes down to the financials, I'm clueless, and I need to learn that one day. But I feel like my brain is kind of full at the moment. So So I don't want to learn it. But you know what's been really interesting around doing the research for this new book, Fanocracy, is that I worked with my daughter. My daughter is my co-author on this book. She's 20.
Yeah.
She's 26 years old now, and she was 21 when we started to do the research on the book. And I'm a massive fan of live music. I'm a white guy in my 50s, and my daughter is only 26, so she's a millennial. She's mixed race, obviously a woman, and I love live music. You can see over here, I've got my live music wall of fame.
Oh, cool.
And my daughter, however, is really into Harry Potter. So
Okay.
we have different fandoms, different gender, different generation, even different race. And she's a neuroscientist. She did a neuroscience degree at Columbia University, and
Cool.
she's now a medical school student. She's going to finish her medical school studies this year and become an emergency room doctor. So we
Cool.
came at this idea of fandom in two different directions,
Yeah.
but we realized we actually have the same ideas about how fandom works. So researching and writing the book together with her has been great. And the idea of neuroscience and fandom is something that's been fascinating to us. So let me give you a bit of an example of one of the things we learned. We spoke with a number of really well-known neuroscientists about what's happening in our brain when we become the fan of something. Like, for example, in
Yeah.
my case, I've been to 75 Grateful Dead concerts. Grateful Dead, an American band, started in 1965 in San Francisco. They're still actually going strong with three of the founding members, which is remarkable, 54 years later.
Wow.
And I've been to 75 Grateful Dead concerts, and what's going on in my brain is that I go to Grateful Dead concerts with people who have become my best friends, people who have like-minded. Who are like-minded to me, people who share the same fandom, and this is true of all of us. Sometimes the most powerful connections we have as humans are with those people we trust the most, which are the people that we share something like the love of a rock band, or in the case of my daughter, the love of Harry Potter. And and so neuroscientists say that the reason for this is because the closer we get to someone physically, the more powerful the shared human emotion is. And there's a neuroscientist named Edward T. Hall that identified four different levels of proximity. One level, the furthest away, is called public space. That's 20 feet or further away.
Okay.
So our brains don't track people in public space. We know they're there, but we don't pay close attention to them.
Yeah.
However, when people get within 20 feet, which is called social space, we can't help ourselves. Our ancient human brains, our DNA, it's hardwired in us that we begin to track people as they get within about 20 feet of us, because our ancient brain wants to know, is this a friend, a foe, or a possible mate? And
Yeah.
so what we're doing is we're tracking those people. And then when someone gets within 4 feet of us, that's called personal space.
Uh-huh.
That's like cocktail party distance. So if we trust someone and we like them and they're a friend or a family member or somebody or a colleague or somebody we met at a conference or a cocktail party who we've come to like quickly, that's a very, very positive, powerful, emotional connection when someone is
Yeah.
within 4 feet of us. But it's also can be a very negative emotion if we don't trust them. Like, for example, that's
Yeah.
why you feel uncomfortable in a crowded elevator. And this is hardwired in our bodies. We can't help it. So, what this means for us as business people and even as marketers is the closer you get to someone, the more powerful the human connection. Can you, for example, create more opportunities to get close to existing and potential customers? Perhaps can you have a client conference where you bring people
Yeah.
together for a day? Can you have more opportunities to meet people over lunch? But it gets even more interesting with neuroscience, Gina. So here's the next aspect of this concept. Some people will say, but my business doesn't lend itself to getting physically close to people. It turns out that through something called mirror neurons,
Oh, I've heard about those.
yeah, you can get virtually close to someone. Here, mirror neurons are the part of our brain that fires when we see someone do something as if we're doing it ourselves. So when I do something, my brain fires. But when you
Yeah.
see that happen, your brain fires too. That's why you get sad at a sad movie. You get you get scared at a scary movie.
Yeah.
Here is a lemon I'm holding in my hand. Here is a slice of lemon I'm holding in my hand. So if I take this slice of lemon, and I taste it, I immediately feel the tartness. My mouth begins to saliva. My mouth puckers up uncontrollably. I even begin to close my eyes because of that powerful taste of the lemon. My brain is firing because of that lemon, and
Yeah.
I would bet that your brain was firing too. I bet you tasted a little bit of that lemon yourself, because of that, because of mirror neurons. So what that means for marketers is, can you do exactly what you and I are doing right now? Create virtual ways of getting within people's personal space.
Mm,
So right now we're talking as if we're about 4 feet away.
true.
That's how close we are to the camera. I'm
Yeah.
about 2 feet from my camera. You're about 2 feet from your camera. That means we're about 4 feet apart. We are in virtual personal space, even though we're on different continents as we're
Yeah.
making this recording. So as a marketer, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, can you get in in the virtual personal space of your customers? Can you make that part of your marketing, of your work? Can you have videos that you push out on a YouTube channel and on your site, and maybe
Mm, mm.
Facebook Live and maybe Instagram video, where you're talking directly into the camera like we are now, and you're relating to people on this virtual personal level? It also explains the humble selfie. When I take out my phone and take a picture from a selfie angle, it's about 4 feet away.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why selfies, people dismiss them as frivolous, but selfies are really powerful because you're showing a virtual way that you're in proximity with someone. So I just riffed for a really long time about how neuroscience informs how we can develop fans. That's one chapter in the new book. But these are the things that I think are the future of marketing. We've talked a little bit about the old rules of marketing, buying attention, the new rules of marketing, creating attention online. People are abusing that channel. I think the
Mm,
next
mm.
wave is this idea of true human connection.
That's an interesting point for anyone in B2B marketing in particular, because you tend to have buyer groups of large people with lots of power that have a massive buying decision to make, and they have to build those relationships. And as marketing has ended up in a position where you're covering more and more of the marketing funnel as you go down, until people rarely have a human connection with a salesperson, who's typically the person who would have provided that information in the first place.
Yep.
It's almost like marketing has simultaneously tried to get connected and closer to their audience and push them further away at the
Yeah.
same time.
I think there's
It's a
some
kind of,
truth. I think there's some truth to that. And specifically with business to business marketing, these ideas we just talked about using video and using images to get virtually close to people, as well as hosting events to get physically close
yeah.
to people, are incredibly powerful. I'm on the advisory board of a company called HubSpot, They
Oh, I
actually have,
love them.
yeah, they're wonderful. They have a Sydney office that I visited a couple of times to do some events. But HubSpot uses this technique in a really big way. They have an annual conference here in the Boston area with 25,000 people.
Yeah.
And they use virtual, and so that's physical connection, actual human connection. And they use virtual connection with the way they create videos. They have something called HubSpot Academy, and HubSpot Academy is a series of online courses that are free that you can
Yeah.
take. And the way the videos are shot makes it feel as if you are having a personal connection with, they call them the professors at HubSpot Academy. So they're a B2B company that's done a great job with this idea of proximity, and they're doing really well as a result. They've had year-on-year growth every single year. They're growing like crazy. When I joined them, they had no customers. They only had beta software, and there were only 8 employees. They now have
Wow.
3,000 employees, $650 million in revenue. So they're doing extremely well.
I'm a huge HubSpot fan, and I know the feeling about that connecting emotionally with them. Part of the reason I think they may have been so successful in the marketing sphere is they have always tried to give people value.
Yeah.
It's that philosophy that underpins what you're doing with your fans. It's the reason that I want to connect emotionally with other B2B marketers and help share value from the insights that I've gathered from influential marketers like
Yeah.
yourselves. And it's the reason that HubSpot gets case studies like the one I was able to feature in when I was working as a marketing director using their products. They know the power of human connections, and they've been doing that in their content since the year dot, since they were giving
Yeah.
away great free stuff, and that kind of lures people in. But this leads me to a question. If people are giving away so much free stuff, do you think we're going to get to a point where we're either going to expect everything for free, or that freemium model is actually going to outlive its usefulness?
I don't think so. I think that that what's happening is that people recognize that the information that you deliver for free has to have value.
Yeah.
So, the days of a throwaway, crappy white paper driving attention, that's gone. But if you create true value, it's incredibly powerful. And just getting back to HubSpot Academy for a second, I'm in the process of finishing up a course about Fanocracy,
Oh, cool.
about how to grow fans of your business for HubSpot. And this will be offered for free. I did it with my daughter Reiko, so she's part of it. And this has been a huge project. We've worked on this for 6 months. We went into the studio to record a series of, I think there are about maybe 15 or 20 videos. The videos are going through a really heavy professional edit. We're having some infographics be a part of it. I mean, it is a really big deal to create a HubSpot Academy course. I've probably personally put in 50 hours of work into
Wow.
this, and they've probably put 500 hours of work into it. I mean, it is a big deal. So, and the end result will be a 1 hour course. Um,
Wow.
so that's that kind of effort, a niche effort of, not everyone in the world wants to know how can I build fans for a business to grow my business,
Yeah.
but enough people do that it's worth it. And creating something of true value will always be a successful way to market. I think what's going away are the throwaways, the really quick, down and dirty, not very interesting blog post, the Instagram picture of something that's not very interesting. I mean, those, I don't know how helpful those are going to be in the future, but true value will always have value.
Well, that begs the question of how valuable is the time of what you're putting in and what's the return on investment? Because a lot of marketers will look at this and go, okay, we've got the advanced tracking tools in our world. We can see what people are doing online. We can see what they're consuming. And it's great that people are willing to give away their ideas and their information for free. But like, where's the gotcha? Because I'm kind of expecting someone to say, well, I've given you this amazing hour of free content that probably had cumulatively 150 people's hours worth of effort put into that. And you've got to go, right, someone's making money out of this somewhere. What's the catch? Do you think people are expecting that gotcha?
I don't think there's a catch. And I think that the companies that don't actually give away their things for free, that for example, what I mean by that is there's a lot of B2B companies that will offer a white paper or ebook or other piece of content only in exchange for an email address.
Yeah.
And so they say, oh, here's our free white paper. But they immediately set up an adversarial relationship where they demand something in return before they even give you something. That is, I believe, the wrong approach. When you first encounter someone, you should be giving with absolutely no expectation of anything in return. You should be giving a gift with no expectation of anything in return. Now, humans are hardwired to appreciate a true gift.
True.
I'm not talking about a white paper in exchange for an email address. That's not a gift, that's coercion. I'm talking about a true free white paper with no strings attached, no registration requirement. Now, what you can do is inside the white paper, make a secondary offer. Hey, did you like this white paper? Well, why not subscribe to our podcast? Hey, did
Yeah.
you like this white paper? Why not reach out and join our webinar series, or whatever the call to action offer is. But the initial content should be totally free. And I'm a true believer in, absolutely believe this. And I know it sounds kind of woo woo and airy fairy, but I truly believe the more gifts you give to the universe, the more that comes back to you for good things that come back to you. I truly believe that. It's been true in my life. The more things that I give away, the more positive things that come back to me. And I think that is a way to build business. However, it's not a short-term, easily measurable,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not going to make your numbers this quarter. It'll make your numbers next decade for sure. It'll not make your numbers for this quarter.
That's a good point. It's a long-term activity.
Yeah,
It's a marathon rather than a sprint.
yeah,
And
exactly right.
that's maybe a lesson that businesses need to learn in this new era of authenticity, of connectivity, of connection, of emotion, and of, having conversations with people 4 feet away, being in that personal space. Maybe the lessons that businesses need to learn is patience.
Yeah, I think patience is one. I think another lesson is always tell the truth. That was another
Yep.
that's another chapter in our book where we analyzed organizations that play fast and loose with the truth.
Ooh.
And there's like Wells Fargo Bank is one.
Yeah.
Done just a really bad job. But other organizations, when they make a mistake, they own that mistake, and in
Yeah.
the end, they get much stronger as a result because their fans um, have been built up over months or years or even decades. And if you're truthful to them, they're much more likely to support you for the long run. But if you're dishonest to them, they'll drop you in a second. So be in it for the long run. Always tell the truth. And make sure that you're speaking like a human. Especially B2B companies, for
Yeah.
whatever reason, can't do that. They, I just, every time I see a B2B company that say we're the flexible, scalable solution for improving business process using cutting edge technology and best of breed software, I'm like, why don't you simply speak like a human? You're not speaking like a human when you use
Yeah.
that language. And then they use these inane stock photographs. You know, um, a stock photo of something like a building, okay, fine. But a stock photo to represent your customers or a stock photo to represent your employees, that is not a human approach to doing business. So, use language so that you speak like a human. If your mother doesn't understand it, you shouldn't put it out there.
Yep.
And number two, use images of true, real humans, your customers, your partners, your employees, not models pulled out of a catalog.
I guess the challenge there is that human scenarios don't look as pretty in real life as they do, when you've got the perfect lighting and the makeup and the actors. But I agree with you. There's no reason that organizations can't use real human beings, except for that fear of control of actually showing the real, showing the underbelly, exposing a little bit of vulnerability. So
Yeah,
maybe
I
that's an
think
element too.
I think that's an element. It's also more difficult. It's really, really, really easy to go on a stock photo site, pay $25 and
Yeah.
get a picture of a couple of models sitting around a conference table and say, our clients love us. Well, those aren't
Yeah.
your clients. That's a $25 stock photo you bought. It's more difficult to get a couple of your clients sitting around a conference table in your office and take a photo of them. That's more
Yeah.
difficult, but it's much, much, much better to do that. It's way more authentic. People see through that fake stuff.
And you would know better than anyone else, which I think leaves us just enough time to be able to ask. I think you've answered the question about what's the future of marketing. It's about all of these things that we've been
Yeah,
talking
it's
about.
true human. To sum it up in one sentence, true human connection.
Beautiful. So that leads me to the last question, which is if you could do anything differently in marketing or life now or in the future, what would it be and why?
If I could do anything differently, that's so interesting. If I could do anything differently, I don't think, looking at my career path and looking at my life path, I can't think of any major thing I would do differently. I mean, little things, sure, but I can't think of a major thing I would do differently. I'm so happy with where I've ended up, personally and professionally. It's been great. I mean, a little thing, it's not a big deal, but a little thing. I never started an email newsletter. And I wish if I had started an email newsletter 17 years ago when I started my business, I'd probably have quite a few subscribers by now, but I just never did it. I never did it. I never did it. But that's not a big deal. It's fine because I do lots of other stuff.
Well, if you want some help starting email newsletters, I can help. In fact, you
Cool.
know what? I am offering and pledging my support to you here and now to say, let me help you write your first email newsletter if that's something you want to do still.
No, I don't. I don't. I wish I had done it 17 years ago and kept it up until now, but I don't want to start a new one.
All right, well, offer
But
rescinded.
I very much deeply appreciate the offer because I know it was coming from the heart. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you. I appreciate that. It's been fabulous to have a conversation with you. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave an audience with now, bearing in mind this is going to be an audience of B2B marketers who are struggling in this new world that's like the
Yeah.
new world of marketing post
Yeah.
PR? What is the thing that you'd
So
most want them to know?
yeah, I do. There's two things, but they're very much related. I have spent the last 5 years studying what the future of marketing is. And I am absolutely firmly convinced that the future of marketing is a true human connection. And to make it even more specific is how can you build fans for a business, even a B2B company?
Yeah.
Even, I've researched a bunch of B2B companies that have done this, Microsoft, HubSpot, many others. And I am absolutely convinced that fandom is no longer just for entertainers and athletes anymore. Fandom is for all organizations. And I call it a fanocracy, new book, Fanocracy. It's the idea of a true human connection. The second thing is that when you're doing this, it makes your life better. The idea of a human connection, it's a much better life than sending out all of this nonsense, digital fake stuff. And we can live a better life. We can have more fun. We can enjoy what we do for a living in a much better way when we do this kind of marketing, when we reach out to people in a true human way. I am no question in my mind this is the future of marketing. If it's kind of going back to the past, it's a true human connection.
Beautifully wrapped up, extremely succinct in its conclusion. I can't wait to read a copy of your book. And I'm so excited about what the future holds for marketing. Thank you so much for your time.
Me too. Thank you very much, Gina. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, okay. I'm just stopping recording.
All right. Cool.